Welcome to the WORKOLOGY podcast, where we discuss the science and art of the workplace, gain powerful insights, resources, and perspectives on the industries of human resources and recruiting. Join your host, Jessica Miller-Merrill, chief blogger at bloggingforjobs.com, for an in-depth and no-holds-barred look into the future of our most powerful business asset, the employee. And now, welcome your host, Jessica, with this podcast episode of WORKOLOGY.
We've been talking a lot about the job market and really how competitive the job economy is now. Companies are more challenged than ever to find the right talent to fill their organizations, and they're also expected for those new employees and experienced employees to perform. We want to get the most out of them, the best leadership, the best production, the best teamwork. We want the whole package. But how do we put that all together? How do we get everything we need out of our workforce to do our best and meet those investor or leadership expectations? We're going to talk about that today. Our guest today is Adam Stelzner. He's the author of the new book called The Right Kind of Crazy, and he's a rocket scientist for Jet Propulsion Laboratory. He's worked on several spacecrafts, including Galileo and the Mars Pathfinder. He is someone who understands the importance of teamwork, innovation, and finding solutions to seemingly impossible problems. I'm excited to have him on the podcast for a number of reasons. He has some really great insights. We'll link to a YouTube video at the end of the transcript that will give you some good insights just into his thinking process, in addition to the link to the book. Welcome, Adam, to the WORKOLOGY podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jessica.
Is there anything else that you wanted to share about your background or you?
Well, I'm an engineer, and I work with a tremendously talented and bright set of folks at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And in that regard, I consider myself very lucky. I really love my work, and I think that that's a key, as we'll discover, in getting a lot out of your own ability to produce and the ability for people you work with, helping them contribute.
Well, I mentioned at the beginning here that you're a rocket scientist, which I think in itself is really interesting, but you also have an interesting background, and you also work with work situations that really are literally life and death. What led you to this career?
Although I'm an engineer and a rocket scientist now, I didn't start out as that. I actually started out in rock and roll as a musician. And it was only my curiosity, actually, about the movement of the stars in the night sky that sent me back to school to learn about my physical universe that resulted in me following this career path of being an engineer. I've always been sort of attracted to high-risk endeavors. And so my niche of engineering, which I share with a very talented group of people at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, is designing, building, and operating prototype robots, exploring other planets and other regions and reaches of our solar system. That activity is high risk, and that's kind of why I gravitated to it.
I find this so interesting, and you mentioned in this YouTube video that we'll link to at the end of the podcast that you actually were responsible for landing the Mars Pathfinder on Mars. Is that right?
Yeah, I led the landing team for the Mars Curiosity rover, and it was the biggest rover we've ever put on the surface of Mars, the size of a car. And it was a challenge, and I was leading an incredibly capable team. And really, through the process of leading that great team, I kind of learned some stuff about leadership.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. So give us your sort of unofficial definition of teamwork. What makes a great team?
A couple of observations. Human beings are fundamentally social beings. And all of the great works of humanity are done by humans working together. The quality of our work really is a reflection of the quality of the teaming and the teamwork. A great team is a team that understands the strengths and weaknesses of each other, of all the elements within the team, brings themselves, the fullness of themselves, their beliefs, their passions, their discipline, their hard work, their intellect, to bear on this joint effort, this shared endeavor. That is teamwork for me.
When I was looking at the book, and I have an advanced copy in front of me, and I love the title, by the way, The Right Kind of Crazy. I just feel like in order to be great and to be a leader and to be innovative, you have to be a little bit of crazy.
Yep.
But you say in the book that great work requires many people coming together, and it's one of the great prizes life has to offer. How do you think leaders can take advantage of this philosophy?
There's a few things that quote speaks to. One is the fact that I believe fundamentally as individuals, each of us humans finds it joyful and is made happier by working together. That's how we got to where we are on the top of the pyramid of the creatures on this earth, is by our incredible and uncanny capacity to work together. So the act of working in a team is itself a value proposition for all the individuals. How leaders can leverage that philosophy is really understanding and creating a culture that acknowledges the joy of teamwork, that acknowledges the fun, the play of the give and take that happens on a team.
I love the quote, and you also talk about how to be a member of the team. You have to bring yourself in the process, and you call that self-authorization. Can you walk us through what this means and how it involves every person in an organization, regardless of the level that they are in individually?
Excellent. Yes. So self-authorization, I first experienced self-authorization, and I talk a bit about this in the book, as I stepped up to take leadership roles. And as I did that, I was doing that not by request, but by my observation of a little bit of a vacuum and a need to step into that role. What I was doing there is I was taking risk myself. I was putting myself out there. I was saying to the folks I worked with, hey, I don't know if this is the right direction, but what if we moved the team in this direction? And, it was an act of leadership, but that happens, should happen, and must happen for a very effective team at all the levels. All members of the team are providing leadership at some level. In fact, as I speak a bit about in the book, the act of leadership is in part an act of following. If you've got a really great, talented team, the team will push the effort around in directions that the leader may not have anticipated. So to have a really high-functioning team, it's got to be filled with people who are willing to invest in the joint effort, even willing to challenge the direction in which the team is moving, to help together find the best path forward. So you need to self-authorize. You need to be willing to put yourself out there, say what you think, deliver what you believe, and enter those ideas into the great debate of the team for the team to really find the best forward path.
Say what you think, deliver what you believe, and enter those ideas to move the team forward. Love it. I think it's a really powerful message, and something that you guys you've used at organizations like NASA to land crafts on Mars, which is just, for me, like mind-boggling, but absolutely amazing. Let's take a bit of a reset here. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill, and you're listening to the Workology podcast powered by Blogging for Jobs. Today's topic is secrets to creating teamwork in the workplace. We have Adam Stelzner here, and you can follow Adam on Twitter at STELTZNER. And he's over there on the Twitters. I love the Twitters. Well, let's go ahead and get back to our next question. I want to talk a little bit more about Mars. And let's talk about when you were dealing with the team and some of the challenges that you faced. What was the biggest challenge you faced in your career, maybe in working with NASA or Jet Propulsion Laboratories?
Well, there's a time in our work, there is frequently a time when you're inventing. I think this is true for any industry, not just rocket science, but it can be when you're making the next iPhone app, or whether you're looking to make a breakthrough in energy or energy storage or any kind of technology or innovation. There will be times when you face challenges that you can't see your way past. You come up against a wall, or you find yourself stuck and you don't know the path forward. Now, I call that the dark room, and I talk a little bit about it in the book, and I give some examples, like the airbags for the Mars Exploration Rover program were a great example of when we were in the dark room. We were blowing airbags up. These airbags were needed to have us safely land on the surface of Mars, and we didn't have a design that appeared to work. Moments like this are very anxiety-provoking. They are desperate. It's a high-stakes game. You can have millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars invested in a mission, and you cannot know that you've got a positive solution forward. What you have to realize, there's two things that I think you need to realize when you're in the dark room. One is the old adage, a coward dies 1,000 deaths. It may be that this time in the dark room there is no solution, and it's the end of the effort that you're engaged in. Don't worry about that. Don't anticipate that. Don't imagine that. Thinking that way doesn't help. And in my experience, there's really always a solution. There's always a way out of the dark room. The other thing to recognize is that sometimes, frequently, in the dark room, we have to surrender. We have to give up on the solutions and the forward paths we were thinking or trying to drive forward. And it's only in that moment of surrender that we're open to the creative solutions that are perhaps outside the box and will really take us out of the dark room.
I think that one of the biggest challenges for any type of leader is that surrender, because it's really an unknown, right? What happens if we fail? I think that's the biggest fear when you're surrendering to saying, hey, I don't have the answers here. How do you suggest that people move forward and look at new options? Like, what do they need to do to be able to be okay and surrender and know that they might fail?
Great. Yeah, the first and probably the most important thing is to recognize it's not about you. It's about the effort that the team is engaged in. Usually when we worry about failure, it's a very personal thing. It's I'm in charge, or I'm leading this thing, and it's going to be my tuchus on the line. How will this look? What will this mean for my career? All of that kind of stuff. That is noise. The real message, the real signal is what the team is engaged in, the problem at hand. And so in order to surrender, you have to acknowledge that it's not about you. It's about this bigger effort that you're engaged in with your team. Let go of your concerns, which, in some sense are kind of petty, about what this means to you as the leader or the individual, and focus on the problem at hand. Let go of the solutions that you assumed would work, and listen for the solutions, the new solutions that will work. It's not I can't absolutely guarantee that will always be the case, but I can tell you it has always been the case every time for me.
I agree with you. I think people and teams who take risk and are open to surrender, that's when the enlightenment really can come, and really how you can move forward and find an unexpected idea that really can transform a team, an organization, or in your case, be able to allow you to land on Mars. What type of suggestions do you have for employers to cultivate the right kind of crazy?
Well, I have a couple. One, I think it's very important within a team or within an organization to differentiate between the people and the ideas that the people hold. This separation is important because you should love and respect the people very strongly, but allow the ideas to do mortal, brutal combat with one another. That separation creates two very powerful cultures that I think can drive a team's performance. That is the culture of collaboration, that mutual respect puts you in a position where you're ready to collaborate, and a culture of innovation, that culture of brutal battle between the ideas is the culture that innovates. It helps find the strong ideas which represent the right path forward for the team. So my number one tip is look to separate the people from the ideas that the people hold.
That's a challenging order, or especially when you think about the personal feelings or friendships that we develop at work where we spend the most time. Do you have a secret sauce to being able to separate the two?
I learned this technique, by the way, from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. It's kind of the intrinsic culture of the lab. The way I implement it is I use myself as an example. I bring my own ideas up for criticism by myself and others to demonstrate that you can attack my ideas and I acknowledge you're not attacking me. So I try and embody or model that behavior of separation. You can be my friend, I can love you, and I can think that your idea just doesn't work. And I can come down hard on it, but I will make you know, I'll help you recognize that I'm not coming down hard on you, I'm coming down on the idea through that separation.
I like that. I think that it's something that I'm writing down notes as we go, because everything for me is personal relationships, personal friendships, business is personal. But I do think that in order to be innovative, we definitely have to separate the two. I'll be putting that on my 2016 list as in terms of New Year's resolutions, I think.
Right. Those personal connections are absolutely essential. But at the extreme, they become cronyism. They undercut a meritocracy. And really, if your organization or team is in any kind of stiff competition in an open market, you really can't afford that. You've got to be able to maintain those connections personally, but let the merit of the ideas and the programs and the direction of the individuals be evaluated by themselves.
This is more important than ever in the current economy where everything is so competitive and the stakes are really high and great talent is hard to find. One of the things I like about your book, and I know we're talking a lot about teamwork, but you also talk about innovation and leadership, which we've touched on those things. Are any suggestions or tips for how leaders or our listeners, HR and recruiting leaders, can drive innovation and leadership in their organization? What steps or what suggestions can they take from this podcast maybe to go implement or begin implementing in their workplace?
Right. Well, again, there's this idea of developing this culture that separates the merit, the ideas from the people, and really forms the culture of collaboration and the culture of innovation. Beyond that, there is the value proposition that your work can and really should be joyful. You know, I am lucky to work at a job that if I was a billionaire, I probably would pay people to come in and work alongside me, and I'd probably do the same work. Every organization should look for that value proposition, should look for the way in which that work which they do, which they demand of their employees, that strength of team effort is one that is a source of enjoyment, is a source of fulfillment for the employee. Because when the employees are really engaged, personally engaged, and they're personally engaged when they're putting the whole of themselves into their work, so drawing the employee in and developing that value proposition that says your work is joy. If you love your work, you don't really work a day in your life. And so I think the tip I would give is look to the effort, and it's a different shape in different industries and in different circumstances. But look for how to forge that value proposition that the employee is really respected, valued, and can contribute at the peak of their capability, and they will find the joy in that process, and they'll contribute the maximal amount to the collaborative effort.
I think love and joy and being really passionate and engaged about your work is something that we really struggle with, especially when you look at the fact that Gallup's most recent 2015 engagement survey showed that only 31.5% of employees were engaged in the workplace. So this is definitely something that we can all work on, and we're continually trying to strive for improved engagement and that passion. One of the things that you also said in the book, which kind of goes along with the joy that you were mentioning earlier, and this is a quote from the book, is that people don't necessarily have to be incentivized with stock options and mega salaries for curiosity-driven creativity to occur. The only essential ingredient to work environments that are structured to encourage our innate drive to wonder, question, and explore. I wondered, how do employers create teams that encourage this kind of philosophy? I mean, is it just having a great leader in the organization, or is it something more? How do we hire and build on this philosophy that drives the entire organization forward?
In every field, in every industry, there are the unanswered questions, usually and frequently great market advantage is made by answering some of those unanswered questions. And so the value proposition for an HR recruiter is to find how to engage with an employee or a prospective employee's innate human curiosity and connect it to the wonder that is in their field or industry. You know, we are born through hips too narrow to pass a fully baked human brain. And we come in to this world really primitive. Human children do. In fact, our brains are smaller in comparison to the size they will become than any of our closest primates. We come in half-baked with a few fundamental and very important programs in us, perhaps the most important of which is be curious. Every child has developed a model of their universe through playing in the sand, pouring water into a cup. We are all curious creatures. That's kind of fundamental in our DNA. And so for an organization to connect with the curiosity within their employees, to make space for those employees to explore using that curiosity as its motivation and discover new value for the organization, is a value proposition that works both ways. The employer and the organization reap the benefits of it, and the employee is motivated by engaging in their innate curiosity.
Adam, where can we go to learn more about you?
www.adamstelzner.com is my brand new website.
Awesome. And we'll include a link into the transcript and also a link to your new book, which is The Right Kind of Crazy, a true story of teamwork, leadership, and high-stakes innovation. It's got a lot of good stuff. I've got my copy highlighted quite a bit with some sort of thoughts and things that I'm going to be putting down on paper over the next couple weeks. Thank you for joining us today, Adam. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. Check out Adam's book. It's got a lot of really great stuff. Also, thank you to you for listening to the Workology podcast today, where we discuss the science and art of the workplace HR and recruitment. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill. Until next time, you can visit Blogging for Jobs to listen to all our previous Workology podcast episodes.
Production services for the Workology podcast with Jessica Miller-Merrill provided by Total Picture.